If you are into single player titles, you must have heard this franchise called Far Cry. It's pretty popular and it's been 2 years since the latest game of this series, Far Cry 6, was launched. About the same time I last saw my father. So what happened? Did it fail or was it the greatest Far Cry ever? To be honest, this game is very average. Like, it's the definition of mediocre. Not that it received average reviews, but the community thinks it's kind of underwhelming. Despite the name Far Cry 6, it's the 9th game in the series. There is the original Far Cry from 2004, which is completely different from the Far Cry we know today. There are humans, objects, and monsters in this game. And not the kind of monsters you see when you smoke some herb or drink some suspicious solution of jungle lady, or when your uncle pulled down his pants. There are actual monsters in this Far Cry. Then there was Far Cry 2, which I haven't played, but all I know that guns jam in this game and somehow it was so revolutionary that everybody talks about it. Far Cry 3, there was definition of insanity and there was sex. And the guy whose name is Buck,
and he lacks the
everyone loved that. Pretty much what made Far Cry franchise Far Cry. I will talk about this game when I compare it to the Far Cry 6, but for now let's move on to Bakadake do Chinchi. Wait a minute. That's not a Far Cry. Far Cry Blood Dragon. Some say it's a DLC, some say it's not a DLC, you stupid bastard. Because Steam doesn't label it as a DLC and it costs as much as the game itself. So I don't have much to say about this one other than I like the aesthetics. Far Cry 4, the underrated Far Cry. It has pretty much all the things that Far Cry 3 was lacking. The story didn't feel like it was stretched, and arguably it is based on the best location in the franchise. The game is based on northern region of India and Nepal. Yes, graphically the newer Far Cry looks better, but come on doggy, you telling me this doesn't look good? This is a 2014 title, by the way. It might not look as good due to the YouTube compression and the fact that I didn't record it. I just yoinked this clip from some poor guy on the YouTube itself. Also, the Shangri-La part was insane. Maybe the gameplay part wasn't that interesting, but the whole narration thing was amazing. Only if you understand Hindi though. I mean, just listen to it.
मुझसे अक्सर पूछा जाता है, कालिदास, तुम शंग्रीला क्यों छोड़ोगे? लेकिन सच तो यही है कि मैंने कभी नहीं छोड़ा। खुद से हटकर किसी चीज में विश्वास करने के लिए यही असली स्वर्ग है। शंग्रीला मुझ में है, आप में है।
It gives me same vibe as
मैं समय हूं। मेरा जन्म सृष्टि के निर्माण के साथ हुआ था।
This is the intro from show Mahabharat. Maybe we'll talk about it some other day. The only reason why this game isn't the best Far Cry in my opinion is probably because Ajay or AJ doesn't talk. He doesn't have a complete personality. I mean, sometimes he talks but doesn't even react when someone is getting stabbed to death with a pen in front of his eyes.
But you couldn't fucking do that! Picture right into the camera. There we are. Awesome.
My father's honest reaction when I was born. Far Cry Primal. Reskinned Far Cry 4. They tried something new and the new was they took all the guns from the Far Cry. Good job. And obviously it didn't work out. Still some people like it. Obviously there are also retarded. Far Cry 5. Oh my god. I don't have any idea why this piece of dog shit is loved by so many. It's probably because it is the most sold Far Cry and a lot of people's first Far Cry. A big disclaimer here. If you have already played a Far Cry, the next Far Cry you will be playing will become boring. That's why so many people prefer Far Cry 5 over 6 and 4 over 5 and so on. It's because they haven't changed anything in all of these years. Far Cry 1, 2 and 3 has massive differences, but now it's all the same. Speaking of all the same, this game is incredibly repetitive. If Was hadn't told me the definition of insanity, I would have learned it here. Half of the game takes place in the darkest part of your uncle's asshole, despite the map being so huge that your mother finally have somewhere to lie down.
My brothers, my sisters, they've been taken from me!
And the story is Interesting. Very depressing, I might add. Silent protagonist who fights Joseph's cult and kills his whole family or the left of it. But out of nowhere, Korea decides to give Hope County a Nagasaki treatment, and both the protagonist and antagonist survive. And the protagonist ends up becoming Joseph's personal ass wiper for the next game. And I am not joking, that is the whole story. One more thing to mention is when you are in a cutscene, it feels like you are being molested because all the cutscenes are shown in POV. And Joseph is always so close to the camera as if he is about to lick you with all that's not on his face.
Oh yeah, bitches Femboy Friday, Femboys by my side, they be
Far Cry New Dawn, reskinned Far Cry 5. They made it pink. They sponsored every YouTuber who criticized Far Cry games.
Oh fuck.
Still, it failed. The game is regarded as short, buggy, and should have been a DLC in the first place. Coffee Addict says, I loved it because of all the pink. Guys, we got him. He is the target audience. He is the one who likes pink. And finally, Far Cry 6. The latest Far Cry and the most average one, I must say. I can't believe Gus, the chicken man himself,
I was acting. Or was I?
had to leave his business to work with Ubisoft, and still the game came out mediocre. Right off the bat, the game gives you option to play as a he Dani or a it Dani. Why? This is so unnecessary. Imagine you get to do the same in Far Cry 3. Jason is burning down the fields of weed, but this time the tits are getting in the way. That was a joke. I don't care, just make it either. It ruins the character for me. Most of the people prefer female Dani anyways. I am choosing male because I like to play as a character who's the same gender as mine for better immersion purposes. Brother, you're gay. It's a very simple question. Do you prefer men or dishwasher? What could have been interesting is if male Dani and female Dani react differently and made different choices throughout the game. And that's not sexist. I am. People grow differently, you know. I'm just giving you an idea. What if one campaign can be played by multiple personalities? That gives us replayability. There are so many possibilities. Come on, do something. Not only personality but also stats. I mean, games have been doing this for years already. Why not do it? They are not creating a new game. They are creating Far Cry 3 over and over and over and over and over again.
Thinking this time is gonna be different.
I'm not gonna talk about the whole story, just the first 20 minutes of it, so that I can compare it to the previous Far Cries. If you don't want even a shred of spoiler, skip ahead. Gus has moved on from Crystal and is now creating a new drug called Viviro. It's a form of tobacco plant that he claims can cure cancer, but it's also a chemical weapon. In order to maximize the production, he takes over Yara and makes slaves, but a woman named Clara fights back. But Dani, the protagonist, doesn't give a damn fuck about it. Alejo, Dani's friend, and Dani wants to leave Yara and head to Miami, America. Lita, also Dani's friend, on the other hand, wants to help Clara frame an innocent girl for installing cheats on CSGO.
I just ride and I reload! What the fuck? Oh my god, I'm stupid! Wait, what the fuck? Clara! Fuck this girl. Seriously?
Lita mentions that Dani is military trained and should join the rebel named Libertad, led by Clara, that fights for Yara. But Dani wants to start fresh in a new country where people are not slaves, just obese. Moments later, Alejo got absolutely no-scoped in the head.
Draftees must report.
Alejo, get down!
You will join us to rebuild paradise.
Now the thing is, in every Far Cry game, within the first 10 minutes someone fucking dies. And sometimes we get to see how protagonist reacts. Let's compare how Jason and Dani reacts when someone close to them dies.
We're gonna find him, we're gonna free the others, and then we're going home.
No! Stay with me, Grant! Please, don't die! Hold on, Grant, hold on! Oh god! No! Grant! Grant!
I like that. No, I respect that. I'm gonna give you 30 seconds. And if this jungle doesn't eat you up alive,
You can see how it takes a moment for Jason to realize what has happened. He can't even hear Vas. All he can think of is how to stop his wound. The adrenaline rush, the panic, it's intense and chaotic. And this is how Dani reacts.
Fuck Castillo! Alejo! No! Draftees must report for duty.
Danny, we have to go. Now!
The boat. You're coming. Promise me, Lita.
See. Come on, Danny.
I don't know, bruh. As if she knows that it's a side character and nobody cares about him. She treated him like an NPC. Unlike Jason, Dani doesn't panic, just instant grief. Not even grief. She looked like a sad emoji and that's it. That shot though, that was some amazing reaction time. Rest in peace, Alejo. He was an idiot, a stupid dumbass bastard, and a retarded ass bitch. I mean, he's the one who was trying to run away, so why suddenly he wants to fuck Castillo? Also, do you remember this scene from Far Cry 3?
I found him! Shit, oh god.
This is where Jason gets his first kill purely out of self-defense, and he still couldn't believe what he has done. There isn't any of it in Far Cry 6 because Dani is already a trained professional, whatever that is. Now Dani and Lita try to escape on a boat, but Gus's son Diego was also there, and Gus finds out and kills everyone except for Dani. Her friend Lita survives for a couple of minutes just to tell her that America is overrated, white privilege, Ohio skibidi toilet gyarres, ooh and mewing, so that she has change of hearts. This scene is fucking hilarious. Imagine your best friend dies and you are like, okay, goodbye, and just leave her to rot. To be fair, later on there is a mission where Dani is hallucinating and there is this voice which asks her, why did you just leave her to rot?
You took my place in Libertad. You just left my body rotting on the beach. It should have been you.
I'm sorry!
So after a couple of missions, you get the choice of either to leave Yara for good and become a McDonald's employee or go fight and die. If you choose to leave Yara, a cutscene will play where Dani is chilling on the Miami beach and you can hear on the radio that Clara is dead. Best ending in my opinion saves you a lot of time because if you choose to fight for Yara, you will be playing Far Cry 5. This is not an exaggeration, the game progression is exact same as Far Cry 5. Similar to Far Cry 5, there are different regions ruled by different Castillo's employees. Additionally, there are allies on each island which will help you defeat them. When you beat all of them, you can go for the main antagonist, same as Far Cry 5. You can go to Castillo's island before killing any of the bosses, but there won't be any story missions available, and enemies will one-shot you, at least on the hardest difficulty. I don't know what to say. The gameplay is the same as other Far Cries. The moment you get to control the character, you feel what my father felt his whole life. Instant disappointment. The way that character moves, the enemy detection arrows, the sliding, the dumbass AI, the grappling hook from Far Cry 4, the vines you can climb from Far Cry 3, pressing F to perform a takedown, it's all the same. Playing all these Far Cries is like playing Minecraft with different shaders. Speaking of shaders, the game looks amazing. You gotta give credit where the credit is due. Every Far Cry game not only looks amazing, but are also very well optimized. Probably because of the amount of assets they reuse, but hey, it works. Games these days look worse than Skyrim and requires you to sell your ass just to achieve 30 FPS. Moving on, the game has some actually cool additions, like horses. I'm joking. Even though horses are cool, they are only useful until you get access to a plane or a helicopter. And even in early game, quad bike exists. It can go almost everywhere horses can go. And one thing that I noticed and nobody talks about is why is there some kind of speed limit in this game? It won't let you go super fast like in other games. Such a shame. It's like they want you to not have fun. And why aren't there any two-wheelers in this game? What's the point of all this terrain? Imagine riding downhill in a bike like the game Downhill. There is also vehicle customization feature in this game. You can attach all sorts of stuff like weapons, but I never used it. The game doesn't throw you into any circumstances where you find these things useful. However, I liked driving tanks to enemy bases and blowing them up. That was fun. Another cool addition to this game are resolver weapons and supremos. Resolver weapons are like the safest 5-minute craft DIY hack that makes life easier type weapons. Some are meh and some are absolutely broken. And supremos are like backpacks with artilleries. Some create ring of fire, shoots poisonous gas at your enemy. enhances melee, and my favorite one that gives you fucking wall hacks. Not only that, but there is a resolver weapon, Lavarita, that feels pretty shitty at first. There is no red dot, no scope, takes like a full magazine to kill an enemy, and enemies with helmets are impossible to kill. But as soon as you combine this with the average Bengali student's backpack, it becomes the most broken thing in the history of video games. Now, not only you can see enemies through walls, but also shoot them. You see, early game with the lack of weapons, tanks are impossible to destroy. But with this, you can just one-shot the driver and there you go. It has a pretty hefty cooldown, but for the duration it gives you, you can wipe out the entire population of furries. It's another overpowered weapon, so why am I hyping it so much? It's not because the weapon is so overpowered. There are a lot of overpowered weapons in this game. It's the sound design and the animation and the visuals, that's what makes it so special. It's quite a hassle to acquire it. You have to go through some pretty boring quests, but it's worth it in my opinion. It's such a shame that you can't use some of these great weapons to their fullest potential, because the game is pretty easy as it is. Similar to Far Cry 5, you also have companions in this game. They give you different perks like marking your enemies, marking traps, attacking, distracting, and even killing enemies. There are some cool looking ones, there are some cute looking ones, and some of them you have to buy with actual money. But I never felt that I needed them. Honestly, this game never throws you in a situation where these extra perks can be useful. I completely forgot about them. But there is one addition in this game that I hated with passion. You see, in previous Far Cry games, you had to level up the skill tree in order to acquire some perks. Unlocking skills and tattoos appearing on Jason's arm was so fucking creative. But in this game, you had to wear different gears in order to get those perks. Now, there is nothing wrong with that. It doesn't feel as progressive as a skill tree. But what pissed me off is I went on an hour-and-a-half long journey in search of all these pieces of this gear just to find out there are no set bonuses, even though it encourages you to collect all the pieces of the same gear. As you can see, 5 out of 5 right there. Skyrim, a game that came out in 2011, 10 years before the Far Cry 6, had set bonuses. Are you fucking kidding me? This moment was the second most disappointing moment in my life, right after when I found out average size is 5 inches and not 5 centimeters. It's a downgrade rather than an upgrade from the previous skill tree. Once you get some decent ones, there is no point trying all these. And there are a lot of them. I think that's about it for all the additions. Everything else is exact same as Far Cry 5.
Leave me alone!
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
Most of the characters in this game are just fine. They gave us a talking protagonist. I don't think it could have gotten any better coming from Ubisoft. Not gonna talk about all the characters, just the main ones. Both Danis are good actors, but because the story was so average, it was a waste of potential. We don't get to see any personality development. Dani remains the same throughout the game. She is already like a menace. She doesn't have any regret about killing, but somehow during a mission, she was questioning about killing Castillo, the main villain of the story.
You want me to kill Anton Castillo? Today? Anton is giving his annual Independence Day speech at the Hotel Paraíso, live. Juan has intel on the exact location of his security detail.
1 in a million opportunity. We're gonna cut the head off the snake and make boots from his skin.
Mierda. And you good with this? Kill a dictator who has raped our land and turned our people into slaves? Thinking about it. What about you? Never killed the president before?
Who the fuck wrote this character? Insane. In Far Cry 3, Jason becomes a mass murderer from an average white dude and have regrets of what he has become. But Dani is straight up savage. I mean, during a mission, she cuts herself open and remove a fucking bomb from inside her. And still was able to walk just after a few minutes. This is some South Indian movie level shit.
Now cut yourself open again, and I am not putting you back together.
Gus is literally Gus. There is nothing wrong with that, but all the other villains in previous Far Cries were unique. Vas, Pagan Men, and even Joseph were villains we never had before. But we have seen Gus. Nonetheless, he was great. Again, it's the fucking story which doesn't make good use of all these characters. Diego. He's like the guy who wants to become a graphic designer, even though his father is literally a millionaire. Clara. Good character. She really feels like someone who can lead a rebel. We don't see as much of her throughout the game, and when we do see her, she has the most boring speeches like, Dani, you were right, people need to coexist. Shut the fuck up. El Tigre or El Tiger was someone who hyped up the mid game for me. Very energetic character, that's about it. Juan. What an amazing actor. He could have been the face of this Far Cry, but they made him like a tutorial guy. He mostly talks about resolver weapons and supremos. You can even hear him on the trailer giving you the tips about the game. What a fucking waste. There are a lot of characters in this game that I didn't care about and are very forgettable, but there is one character who stood out to me the most, Bicho.
I'm Bicho, man! I'm from Mexico!
He's like a normal human being in a video game. Bicho in Spanish means a bug, also can be used to refer a little boy or a little girl, which really depicts his personality. First, I want you to look at the scene. This is probably my favorite scene in this game.
Coming here was gonna fix it all. But it's not going according to plan, is it? What the fuck do you know, eh? I know you're no killer. Look at you shaking. You're a frightened little rat. A pest, a parasite. Yes. You take and give nothing back.
Bicho, don't listen to him.
That's right. Bicho. Just a blood-sucking bug.
You must have heard that children can be easily manipulated, and in this scene you can see how Bembe takes control over him. Even though Bicho has the gun, Bembe knows that he isn't a killer and quickly uses this against him and manipulates him into thinking that he is useless like a bug which gives nothing and takes nothing. Hearing this, Bicho puts the gun on his own throat and Dani tries to convince him that he is not useless, and she did a really terrible job at it, but it still worked.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hang on. You are not Bicho. You're not a bug. What's your real fucking name?
You wanna fix something? Pull that trigger.
You need to shut the fuck up right now.
My name's Paz.
Yeah. Okay. Your name is Paz. You're Paz. You're not Bicho. You're not a bug. You're Paz. And I need you here with us, man.
He couldn't take his own life. What a relatable character.
I was acting.
Far Cry 6 is not a bad game. In fact, none of the Far Cry games are. Yeah, I said it, even New Dawn. But for someone who's playing Far Cry games for a really long time, you expect the next game to be better. You want to experience the same feeling that you once got from playing this game. I think that's what they are trying to do. That's why all of these games have little to no difference from one another, at least gameplay wise. As for the success of the game, Far Cry 6 has gross revenue of 14.5 million on Steam, which is okay, but compared to Far Cry 5, it's not even a fraction. Far Cry 5 has a gross revenue of 197 million on Steam alone. I know it's not fair to compare these two on Steam because Ubisoft decided to launch Far Cry 6 on their own platform up until late 2022. They launched it on Epic Store, and on May 2023, they finally decided to launch it on Steam. I tried to look for how much they earned during that time period between the initial release and the Steam release, but didn't find anything. Still, it's safe to say that Far Cry 5 was way more successful than Far Cry 6 because Far Cry 5, that came out 3.5 years before 6, has more active players right now than Far Cry 6. I see they brought Vas from the dead, even though devs confirmed his death. I don't think Vas is going to save Far Cry 7 if the gameplay is exactly the same. For me, gameplay always comes first, because if I wanted another story, I would just read a book or watch a movie. Yes, some games have exceeded the boundaries of storytelling, but stories that Far Cry games tell never came close to it. Thank you and goodbye.